With Season 3 of Arrow starting tonight, I'm super excited, so I'm already working on the complete story to one of my favorite Green Arrow runs that recently ended, The Outsider War. But I figured before we go to that, everyone really needs to know who the real Green Arrow is, and why what was originally just a Batman clone turned into getting his own TV show. Now, we're going to do something a little different today. I'm going to explain why Green Arrow was so important to comics while we briefly go over his storyline history. Green Arrow, whose alias is Oliver Queen, started as an attempt to make a Robin Hood version of Batman. Seriously, in the beginning he had a sidekick named Speedy, an arrow car, an arrow plane, an arrow cave, an arrow signal, and he had a clown-oriented enemy named Bullseye. This is still mocked to this day in certain comics. When Green Arrow rescued Harley Quinn in Injustice, he brought her and introduced her to his arrow cave. Her response was, "That's the only name you could think of? What about the Quiver?" And Ollie responded with, "That's not a bad idea." His first appearance was in More Fun Comics alongside Aquaman, and both superheroes started to just become backup features in various comics, such as More Fun Comics, World's Finest Comics, and Adventure Comics. Both Green Arrow and Aquaman continued past the Golden Age, and they didn't get rebooted with every other superhero for the Silver Age, and this is because their creator, Mark Weisinger, kept placing them as backup features. Then in 1969, the Green Arrow as we know him was created by Neil Adams. This story began with him losing his fortune and becoming an advocate for the underprivileged and political left wing. He also started his relationship with Black Canary. Quickly, in 1970, a new comic was created, the Green Lantern / Green Arrow book. And this was one of the comics that opened the door for comics in general to start becoming more realistic. The two of them traveled across America with Green Lantern standing for the established liberal figure and Green Arrow speaking out for radical change. They drive across America in a beat-up old pickup truck and they find America. Problems such as corruption, racism, pollution, and overpopulation were confronting America, and they looked at it from a superhero standpoint. Then, in a move that was the first of its kind and Marvel quickly followed up on, they ignored the Comic Code's authority. Neil Adams felt that they were having problems conveying the social problems of America with the Comics Code authority over their head, so they released an issue without the stamp of approval. In issue 85 to 86, Green Lantern and Green Arrow deal with Speedy being addicted to heroin. This was so shocking to the public that DC actually got a letter thanking them from the mayor of New York. But shortly after this, the book was canceled due to declining sales, and the Green Arrow was pushed back to being a backup feature in Action Comics. It wasn't until May of 1983 that Green Arrow would finally get a solo miniseries title, and he would face off against Count Vertigo. But this is where things get a bit rocky for our character. First, a son of his was introduced from an earlier flame in his life, Connor Hawke. General adventures ensued until he eventually was killed trying to save Metropolis from a massive bomb. Following his death, Connor Hawke then took over. But that wouldn't last too long, as the series would end up getting cancelled from the change-up. Apparently people just weren't a fan of Connor Hawke as Green Arrow. Oliver Queen ends up getting revived by Hal Jordan at the end of the Parallax run. But he was revived without a soul, as Hal and Oliver agreed that Ollie's soul should stay in heaven, as he earned it. But a plot ensues where a villain wants to use Oliver's soulless body, and he eventually has to come down from heaven to take control of his body again. Now taking on the role of Green Arrow again, he decides to take in Mia Deirdre as his new sidekick Speedy. He then reunites with Roy Harper, the original Speedy, and they go on another cross-country adventure, though this one isn't nearly as long as his Green Lantern adventure. We discover that Ollie has a power ring that was entrusted to him by Hal before his death, and that he in fact knows that Connor Hawke is his son, and that he abandoned Connor and his mother because he felt that he couldn't make a good father. Eventually, a new Green Arrow writer took over, and the story changed focus once again. And in another groundbreaking moment for comics, Mia Deirdre was discovered to be HIV positive from her run as a prostitute before Ollie took her in. It was during this time period that the Year One storyline came out, and the official island origin was introduced, where Ollie was thrown overboard from a boat, and he ends up on an island where he fights against smugglers who are imprisoning the inhabitants of the island, and this adventure changed him. The next run for the character is when his family finally gets more established, and he teams up with Black Canary again, and he marries her. But an imposter is at the wedding and tries to kill Black Canary, and once they realize that the real Ollie is being held elsewhere, Black Canary, Connor, and Mia all mount a rescue operation to go and save him. Green Arrow is then involved in the Blackest Night and the Brightest Day at this point, and then he gets hit with the New 52 reboot. The reboot initially saw some problems as the original writers did not do amazing things with the character. His entire history is gone also, as they're now trying to line this up with the TV show. Oliver's new origin is that he was shipwrecked and learned on the island. He then returned to Star City to run his business, but secretly he goes out as Green Arrow. The board of directors views him as a party boy who doesn't care about his company, and they want to remove him from power. He still had an early history with Roy Harper, the Red Arrow, but they apparently had a horrible falling out. He also has no connection to Black Canary, and as of writing this, Mia isn't in the New 52 outside of a brief mention by one of the villains. The new run has a lot to do with the mysteries of the island, but we're going to be going into that very soon with the Outsiders War, because it really was fascinating. So yeah, Green Arrow was the first to do a lot of things in comics, making him a very interesting character. He was the first character to deal with addiction and a sidekick, he was one of the first characters to travel across country dealing with social problems, and one of his sidekicks was one of the first mainstream superheroes to deal with HIV. I bet you didn't even know that Green Arrow pioneered so many of these taboo topics that we now see quite a bit. As for powers, he's an expert archer obviously, and he also knows several forms of martial arts and was even trained by the same person that trained Deathstroke. As of the New 52, his family really doesn't exist, but the original Arrow group of people were originally Roy Harper, the original Speedy who was raised by a Navajo medicine chief, and when most of the sidekicks are moved onto their own team, the Teen Titans, he was placed with them. He eventually becomes Arsenal using high-tech super weapons, and as of the New 52, he joins Red Hood and the Outlaws. What's interesting about Roy Harper is that he is the sidekick who was dealing with the addiction, being the first superhero to cope with heroin. Black Canary was the early love interest of Ollie's, and she eventually married him. Pre-Crisis, she was actually from Earth 2 and brought back in the 1960s when the Flash was bringing over superheroes from that universe. Her husband was killed, and to get a fresh start, she moved to Earth 1 as we didn't have a Black Canary here. Once the crisis happened, she was turned into two characters, Dinah Drake Lance and Dinah Laurel Lance, mother and daughter, and the younger one became Black Canary. She eventually marries Ollie and has a series of adventures with him, but in the New 52, she now leads the Birds of Prey and doesn't work with Green Arrow at all. Mia Deirdre. When Ollie needed a new sidekick following his revival, Mia was the girl that became Speedy. But she was more pushed off to being an actual sidekick, joining in on the adventures when it was convenient for the writers. But what makes her interesting is that she was the first mainstream superhero to contract HIV, and she dealt with it for years until the New 52 reboot, always making sure to keep herself guarded during fights as she didn't want her blood getting out and contaminating anyone. She was also suffering from the effects of the treatment at times. As of the New 52, she hasn't really appeared yet, but she has been mentioned by the enemies that are looking for her. Hawke. Connor was created as a replacement for Roy Harper when Roy joined the Teen Titans. He was Ollie's son from an early relationship, and as he stated in The Blackest Night, he never really forgave Ollie for abandoning him and his mother. He appears on and off again to work with his father, and as of the New 52, he is now the Earth 2 Red Arrow, since in the New 52, Ollie is far too young to have an adult son. Last thing that I want to cover is the character John Diggle. He was introduced on the show Arrow as a nod to Andy Diggle, the man who wrote Year One and invented the island origin. But he was so well received on the TV show that he's been brought into the comics themselves as John Diggle, his new bodyguard. Very much how Harley Quinn made it into the comics. And that's all the important stuff that you need to know about Green Arrow. I hope you're as excited as I am for Season 3, and I'll see you guys again real soon as we go over one of my favorite new stories for Green Arrow, The Outsiders War. I'm Benny for Comicstorian, and I'll see you guys next time.